I really like it 'cause it makes me feel so good.
There's a whole lot of people trying to mess with your mind. When you were just a little child, they filled you in with every sin they could find, telling you it's wrong to want my good loving. One way for you to know for sure. Does it feel good?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to People Helping People. We'll give everyone a chance to tune in. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special conversation. We're very excited to be joined by our special guests, our cosmic clown, Wavy Gravy. Hi, Wavy. And Ja, you guys are muted. We'll unmute you in a second, so you can just wave. And then we have epidemiologist and activist, Dr. Larry Brilliant is joining us here as well. And the lovely ladies of the Ace of Cups, who can all wave, our little parade wave. And then we'd like to introduce some very special guests that are out there doing incredible things in the world. So we have Doniece Sandoval, who's the founder of Lava May. Thank you for joining us. We have Dianna Cohen, the co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition. We have humanitarians and activists Bob and Natascha Weir. Thank you so much for coming. And then we have what I like to refer to as the protectors of my sanity. So we have Dharma teacher, author, and activist Jack Kornfield and Trudy Goodman. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we have the founders of Walk the Walk 2020, an organization you'll learn more about today. So we have Seth Fleisher here, and Dr. Emily Baldwin will be joining us later during their segment. Guiding our conversation today is Michelle Esrick. Michelle is a social activist and award-winning filmmaker, including Wavy Gravy's movie, Saint Misbehaving. Not that Wavy would ever misbehave. And you can catch that streaming. John, he doesn't misbehave, right? No. You can catch that streaming on Amazon Prime. And then Michelle's new movie, her current film, Cracked Up, is the story of Daryl Hammond. And it's an incredibly moving piece. I highly recommend checking it out. And that is trending on Netflix now. And one of the cool things about Michelle, she can talk about a little later, is she helped pass legislation into law for trauma-informed care to be incorporated into substance abuse treatment. So she's done a lot of work helping people heal. And Michelle, we're so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for joining our conversation. And I will turn it over to you. And again, thank you everyone for being here. And we hope you leave you feeling informed and uplifted today.
And I am very happy to be here with all of you. Let's just jump into the inspiration for this gathering, which is Wavy Gravy's song, Basic Human Needs, and we're going to watch the video that he made with the Ace of Cups.
Clown to tower, I went into space. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. On their feet and something to eat. And wouldn't that be fine now if all humankind had shelter? Deep down. And wouldn't it be grand if we all lent a hand so each one could stand on a free piece of land? And wouldn't that be thrilling if folks stopped their killing and started tilling the land? Basic human needs, basic human deeds, doing what comes naturally. Down in the garden where no one is apart. Deep down in the garden of your heart. Deep down. And wouldn't it be daring if folks started sharing instead of comparing what each other was wearing? And wouldn't it be swell if people didn't sell their Mother Earth? Basic human needs, basic human deeds, when what comes naturally. Down in the garden where no one is apart. Deep down in the garden of your heart. Deep down. Not just churches, not just steeples. Give me peoples, helping people. Not just churches, not just steeples. Give me people, helping people. Give me peoples, helping peoples. Deep down, will you come away down? Deep down, come away, way down. Basic human needs, basic human deeds. When what comes naturally. Down in the garden where no one is apart. Deep down in the garden of your heart. Human needs, basic human needs. Down, will you come away down? Deep down, come away, way down. Not just churches, not just steeples. Giving people, helping people. Not just churches, not just steeples. Giving people, helping people. Giving people, helping people.
Yes. Love that. So Wavy and Jahanara, obviously, being that I made a film about you, I know a few things about you both. Wavy, you wrote this song in the early 70s during the Vietnam War when we, the United States, bombed Bach Mai Hospital on Christmas Day. Can you tell us how that occurred?
Hey, you have some gravy on your ears. It seems like it was almost yesterday, 50 years ago, that B-52s blew up the largest teaching hospital in Southeast Asia. And I was devastated in my little wart in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I watched my hand write basic human needs. It was into my phone book. And it was out of body, totally. My hand was on its own, and I got to watch it do this, and it was a miracle. And that's the tune. It's a miracle.
Thank you, Wavy. It's a gift to all of us, basic human needs. So thank you so much. Dianne and Mary Ellen how did the Ace of Cups come to record Basic Human Needs?
My heart was so touched the first time I heard Wavy sing Basic Human Needs, and I felt the world needed to see and hear the song. And when the band started recording, I suggested we bring Wavy into the studio to sing his song and with his ectar. That's it.
Did you actually tune that thing?
Many strings, never in tune. One string, sometimes I get lucky.
Do we have Mary Ellen on board?
What happened is our really great producer, Dan Shea, came up with the arrangement, how it was put together. Doniece wrote the background vocals, and we were supported by an incredible gospel group that Dan brought in, people that he knew. Then Jesse Block filmed the video, and we just watched, and the track is on our new album, Sing Your Dreams. And we're really thrilled that we have it on this album. We're really thrilled about that.
Me too.
Thank you. It's a beautiful video, and thanks for bringing it to life. Wavy and Larry, when you guys first met, we know it was love at first sight, as you say in the Wavy Gravy movie, Larry. And then we show a picture of Wavy and his all-star cast up to here. It's going to be hard for you guys to talk about your friendship for 50 years, but
do you want to know that story, how we first met?
Yes, tell us the story.
It was in a Warner Brothers movie production site on like Pier 33 or something like that, or Pier 31 and a quarter, a little bit like Hogwarts, I guess. And the idea was to get a lot of rock bands and recreate in reverse the Pilgrims coming to America from England. And we were going to, in some crazy, fantastic way, we were going to go backwards from Haight-Ashbury and go back to Glastonbury and then go to Canterbury. And of course, we'd have to live in buses and do rock concerts. Wavy was the master of ceremonies at all the rock festivals. I was the rock doc. And we're all assembled to meet with Tom Donahue, who was going to be the producer, and Stone Ground, which was one of the bands, and Mylan Melvin. And we were meeting together at the Warner Brothers lot, and all these buses were coming together. And we were all going along and saying hello, and everybody looked pretty normal for the 60s, which may not be normal, but it was normal for the 60s. And then I saw over there in the corner a fellow who was dressed in what seemed rather unconventional attire. For starters, he was wearing a duckbill hat with a real duck's real bill. So I knew there was something unusual about him. And then he gave me a big smile, and there was a rainbow smile, because just like an Asgard, he had a rainbow bridge. I mean, there it is, camera zoom in. I mean, all of his teeth had been dyed in a Bib Gior Roy G. Bibb rainbow. So when he smiled, he gave you the rainbow. So I immediately was beginning to understand that this was not an ordinary human being with his rainbow bridge and his duckbill hat and his jumpsuit that Jahanara, who was then Bonnie Jean, had made for him. And it had all sorts of rainbows all over it and patches and different wonderful insignia. And I went up and I started talking to Wavy, introducing myself, thinking that it would be about a minute or two. And it seemed like 50 years later, that conversation has never stopped. Interestingly, for me personally, my first job when meeting the hog farm and meeting all the cast was because we were going to go international. This will come up later. And there was a lot of smallpox around. My first job was to vaccinate everybody This is 1971 against smallpox. And the first time I really met Wavy was when he put out his arm so that I could vaccinate him against smallpox. It's been, if you'll, Bobby, a very long, strange trip indeed.
Yeah.
So Wavy and Ja have been married for almost 53 years.
53, almost 54.
54. And Girij is not here because she's in a Buddhist retreat and she sends her loving metta to everybody, but she can't talk or do any of the things for 7 more days. But for our 50th anniversary, Wavy sent us a note. I wish I would have brought it in. And it said, Larry, you and I have been friends for 50 years. Ja and Girij have been friends for 50 years. Ja and Wavy have been married for 53 years. Larry and Girij have been married for 50 years. That's more than 200 fucking years.
Mine marches on.
Proven
Yeah, one of the most touching stories you told me, Larry, when I interviewed you for the Wavy film was, and this is, Dr. Larry Brilliant, who I say he helped to eradicate smallpox in India and so much more. You have had incredible titles, but Larry said, the greatest title that I have ever had is being Wavy Gravy's best friend, because he read it in the newspaper. He was reading a newspaper and he happened to be over somebody's house, and it said in the newspaper, Larry told me this, and Wavy Gravy's best friend was there, Larry Brilliant. So in the movie, his lower third is Larry Brilliant, Wavy Gravy's best friend. But Wavy and Ja, showing that hippies can stay married for a long time. Do you want to say what is the secret of a long marriage?
Don't get divorced.
It's the only secret.
That's it.
Unless you really need to.
If you really need to, you can. But the secret to being married for a long time is staying married. You work through it when it comes up.
Back to you, Larry. You're our most trusted source regarding all things pandemic. Right now, 75% of the country is spiking with new cases. 230,000 have died, and we just recorded 80,000 new cases in one day, the most since the pandemic began. The White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, said that we can't control the virus. What does that mean? And if a new administration is elected, God willing, one that relies on science and cares about its people, what do you see as a way forward for all of us?
I was on a call this morning at 4:30 a.m. From Geneva with folks from the World Health Organization, and they would remind us that it's a pandemic, and we should be looking at all the world that's affected, especially the countries which are the poorest, the weakest. There have been over 500,000 new cases of COVID today worldwide. There have been over 1 million deaths worldwide already from COVID. We are at almost 250,000, and we are about 20% of all the deaths in the world, which is important because we're only 6% or 5% of the population. This is not something that we want to specialize in, or this is not a contest that we want to win. And in fact, there are some troubling times ahead of us. We're going into a season where this disease is almost a latitude-based disease. The higher latitudes where it's colder have spiked the first, because it gets cold, you go indoors, and the things that you did in the summer outdoors, you now do indoors. And we're going to have Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, Hanukkah. All these holidays are naturally opportunities for us to get together with people that we love and hug them and spread COVID. And so there's nothing to stop this disease for a little while. I was interested to see that San Francisco is the safest and the most successful city in the United States in battling COVID. And there have been many research articles on why that is. But the major reason that it has the lowest death rate and the lowest case rate is that 90% of people wear face masks all the time and practice social distancing. Those two things alone will protect us. We don't have to get this disease if we practice those things. And if we practice social distancing and wearing face masks, we'll be preventing that disease from affecting not only people we love, but who they love and who they love and who they love, and people you don't even know will be saved by your selfless act of wearing a goddamn face mask. I think that while it is going to be a tough time for the next 3 or 4 months, as we turn into the spring, things are going to get a lot better. Tony Fauci, just a few minutes ago on CNN, said that we might not see the world become normal again until the end of 2021 or the middle of 2022. But actually, beginning in the spring, it's going to start getting almost normal. If you think about what normal used to mean when we all had to have those little yellow cards in order to travel. The yellow card said, you've been vaccinated against smallpox and cholera and yellow fever. Remember that? You couldn't travel without that yellow card. Well, we're going to have that yellow card again, except it'll probably be a Coachella bracelet or a Google Apple app on your phone. That's normal-ish to have something like that shows that you've been vaccinated or you've had the disease or in some other way you're not going to spread the disease. And it's going to be normal because while we have done the worst job in the world at creating tests for this disease, and there's over 150 tests now in the market in the United States, I would guess about 100 of them are not very good. Still, the development is happening so quickly that by the springtime, I'm pretty confident there'll be a $10, 10-minute home test for COVID, like the pregnancy test, and we'll be able to test ourselves every day and know that we are not a risk to others. Those two things, those two things alone will make the world more normal. Those little yellow cards or those apps and those tests. But add on top of that, we will have vaccines. There are over 150 vaccines in trials right now. There's 5 in China, 1 in the Soviet Union. We've got a dozen in the US. Of those, 4 are leading candidates. They're in the ending stages of what's called phase 3. That means they've already shown that they are effective in creating immunity. And right now we're trying to figure out how effective and how safe. I'm very optimistic that of that dozen, of that 150, of those leading 4, we will wind up with not one, but many vaccines that will be effective and will be safe. I think it's going to take a little longer than people think to know that, because safe to me means that rare side effects only happen once every million vaccinations. And you can't test only 30,000 people and know what's going to happen once in a million. It just doesn't work that way. So I think it's going to take a little while to know how safe these are. But I don't know, looking at this demographic, I bet some of you have had the shingles vaccine. Is that right? Have you had the shingles vaccine, anybody? How many got the first shingles vaccine? And then of you, how many got the second one? I think it's going to be like that with COVID vaccines. We're going to get one and then find there's a better one. So put all these things together. We are going to have treatments. We already have a few. We know about the steroids that really shorten the duration of the disease. We know about the monoclonal antibodies that really help. We're going to have vaccines. We're going to have these tests, these point-of-care diagnostics. We're going to have vaccines. All going to wear masks for a while. That's what I mean by it's going to be kind of normal. But what will be the most important thing? This pallor, this PTSD that we have every day, this idea that we are consumed by this despair, that will lift. We will find that we will have conversations about beauty and love and music, and not only COVID and this orange orangutan in the White House. That too will pass. And when those two things pass, we will have not only a normal life, we'll have joy and happiness and fun. And I'm looking forward to a really great summer. We may not have full normal, but we will have something that's kick-ass and wonderful.
Kick my wonderful ass.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. And thank you for helping me when I had COVID in March and you were texting me in the hospital, and you're the only one I trust. So when I'm watching everybody, I say, I don't know, the only one I trust is Dr. Larry Brilliant. So
thank God.
Thank you.
Good.
Money.
So,
hey, Michelle,
yes.
Wavy should tell us all about the magical bus trip that we took from Canterbury after a Pink Floyd concert. We drove all the way to Kathmandu.
Yes, and you can also see that trip in the Wavy Gravy movie.
Go.
Right now?
No, but Wavy, you want to talk about that?
We'll all go out and buy that movie, though, for sure.
It's amazing because there I was on the roof of the bus driving over the Khyber Pass, and they're filming it. So I know that someday in the far future, I'll be able to see myself on the roof of the bus driving over the Khyber Pass. Thank you, Michelle, for piecing it all together.
And our grandchildren will be able to see it in their college classes of recent history.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Help us remember that it happened.
Yeah. No, Kurt Vonnegut said it best. He said, history is a list of surprises, and we were certainly that.
So Dallas, please introduce our next guest.
I'd love to. Well, as the song says, wouldn't it be neat if the people that you meet had shoes upon their feet and something to eat? And wouldn't it be fine now if all humankind had shelter? Our next guest is Doniece Sandoval. She's the founder of Lava May, an organization committed to radical hospitality, making sure every person moving through homelessness has a one-stop access to critical services. Doniece, what do you say to people who want to help with homelessness, but they just don't know what to do or know how? Given the climate of these times, are you feeling despair or are you hopeful?
Thank you, Dallas. Great question. I think there's something in our human psyche that tells us that whatever we do has to be these huge, grand gestures. You know, we started by converting a public transportation bus into showers and toilets on wheels. But I think one of the beautiful gifts I've gotten from doing this work for the past 7 years is to see how the small, tiny things make so much difference. To look a person in the eye and to acknowledge them, to greet them, to say hello, particularly if the person is unhoused and on the street, because so many of, the people in our society view them as outcasts and outliers and not our neighbors, which is exactly what they are. So to take a moment and have that true personal human to human connection, which is what radical hospitality is about. It's about extraordinary care, and it shouldn't have to be called extraordinary care. It should simply be the way that every single one of us is interacting with the people within our circle. There's this wonderful meditation, and it's about connection, and it says, anybody comes within 5 feet of you, say good morning, say hello, make that connection to remember that you were acknowledged and that you were seen. And Brene Brown talks so much about belonging and how critical it is for us to thrive and to live beautiful lives. And so we must create that belonging. That is my call. That's my quest in life, is that we extend true radical hospitality to each other. And it's sometimes challenging to do it to people who we don't necessarily have naturally warm feelings for. I think of, as Dr. Brilliant said, the orange orangutan in the White House. But on some level, even he is deserving, if we believe that everyone has value, of radical hospitality.
Yes, well, Ram Dass, our friend Ram Dass had Trump on his altar, so he's a power of example. He's much more evolved than me. So, connection is the opposite of trauma. Connection is the opposite of suicide. Connection is the opposite of addiction. It is really all about connection and love. And thank you for speaking about that.
Thank you.
Wavy wrote, wouldn't it be grand if we all lent a hand? And wouldn't it be daring if we all started sharing? Natascha and Bob, you have used your high visibility to lend a hand, to share and advocate for the planet and for humanitarian initiatives such as headcount and voting. You've always, as Kesey said, put your good where it does the most. Where are you focusing most these days?
A couple places, actually. Thank you, by the way. First off, and I think the most pressing issue is the coming of election. And I've been working with an outfit called Headcount now for 10, 12 years, something like that. We just passed a milestone. This last week, we finally passed the point where we've registered 1 million voters. Almost 500,000 in this last cycle. So that's enormous, I think.
That's huge.
And I'm real thrilled about that. It's what we envisioned when we started pasting this outfit together. And the vast majority of those people that we are, like 95% of those people that we registered, we keep on them, by the way. We keep on those folks. We make sure that they register, that they stay registered, particularly in states where they purge the voter rolls if they suspect you might be voting somehow against what they think people should vote for. And so we keep on them. We keep on the people that we've registered. We keep in touch with them and make sure that they look into it and find out if they're still registered, and if not, we tell them how to go and get re-registered. And then we're gonna stay on them about making sure they actually get off their butts and vote. Now, what this amounts to is that the vast majority of them, like I say, 95% are young folks. We register them at shows, and they come out to see music, and we get them. My daughter, for instance, spent her summers when she was 12, 14,
Her first job.
16. It was her first job, was going out and collaring people and registering them to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't say no to her because, she's adorable, she's young, and she's, full of life and spunk but there's something that carries through. These people are young. They have their lives in front of them. So voting to them is more important than for somebody my age who's retired and working on his golf game and just wants to make sure his taxes are low.
Mm-hmm. This is breaking news. You're working on your golf game?
He's not.
I'm not working on my golf game.
Just a line.
It's just a line. And I think we're seeing that now, that not only are they voting, but they're making sure that they vote early enough so that despite the fact that our esteemed president has been trying to shut down the post office, that their votes have plenty of time to get to the polls on time and get counted. And the larger picture is that all these kids are, this is the first time in my lifetime, even if you take into consideration Barack Obama's first, this is the first time that kids have shown a real big interest in the democratic principle. And I think that may stick with them for years to come. And I think it's going to have to, because we're going to see our friends, the Repubs, try to litigate away, probably in all likelihood, the most massive landslide in our lifetimes, electoral landslide in our lifetimes. And I think they're going to try to take that to court and litigate it away.
Yeah.
And so if that happens, what are we going to do? Well, I think we're going to have to let the kids figure that out, because whatever they come up with, I'm willing to bet it's going to work, because it's something that our friends the Repubs wouldn't think of and won't be ready for.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just see. I don't know how far they're going to try to get with litigating away a landslide loss in their case. But they're going to try.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about the social dilemma?
Now, there's another issue that I wanted to get into, and that has to do with a movie that's currently out now. Dianna, your movie is eye-opening. This is a new one that's eye-opening as well, and it's as big a problem, only it's more a cerebral problem than a physical one, although it has physical manifestations. The movie is called A Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And it's a documentary. It's available on Netflix. I urge all of you to see it, because if you aren't part of that problem, at least you should at least understand it. And what it does is it breaks down the economic engine that drives social media, and it explains to you why social media does what it does, how it does what it does, and what the end result of that is. For instance, this polarization of American culture and society is a product very much of social media, where if you exhibit, social media is watching you, and they're watching your tastes and the choices you make, and they make sure that you get nothing but that, and stuff more like that. And so, for instance, if you like, what is it, QAnon or whatever that outfit is called,
right? QAnon.
they'll feed you a steady diet of that kind of stuff, and you'll hear about nothing else. If you like left-wing stuff that's, you know, Marxist and stuff like that, they'll make sure that you hear about nothing else. And so once you've lived in the world that's really of your making, that you're making that salted in with the fact that your tastes, your proclivities, your interests take you in that direction, and social media will enforce that direction in you. It's no wonder that we don't speak the same language, that we don't share the same facts, we don't share the same truths.
News. Right.
And that distills down to the news station, the news outlets that we all, you know, there's the Fox News Nation and news distribution to the right of that, and then there's the left-leaning news and stuff like that,
and you can Google something. The example in the movie was climate change, and depending on where you are geographically, you're going to get something completely different. It will the news will be fed to you according to where you are geographically. So, and
also your buying habits and the places you've gone online and stuff like that.
Yeah. So basically, they show you how you're being manipulated. It's such a powerful film. I saw it, and I was.
Now this is something that can be addressed through legislation. And really begs to be addressed through legislation, but it won't be as long as it's working for one party, for instance. And if this election works out like it's looking like it might work out, then we might have an opportunity to wade in and start get our representatives to address the situation. And you know, there are a number of us on this call, for instance, who you know people in DC, which is where it would happen, and also it's at a state level. And Christ, democracy is a chore, but it's a duty also. And it's something that we just have to shoulder. It's a burden we have to shoulder and do, and it's not that huge. It's not that huge a burden. And
we're shoulder to the wheel.
Yep, it's something we got to do, like the clown just said. Okay, well, thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you, Bob and Natascha. You're doing amazing work. Thank you so much. I kiss your feet. So in Wavy's song, back to the song, wouldn't it be swell if people didn't sell their Mother Earth? Which brings me to my dear friend, my shero, artist and activist, Dianna Cohen, co-founder of the Plastic Pollution Coalition. 11 years ago, it started, which I am a proud executive board member mostly from the beginning. And I see Jackson Browne is here, who is also on the board. Plastic Pollution Coalition is a growing global alliance of more than 1,200 organizations, businesses, and thought leaders in 75 countries working toward a world free of plastic pollution and its toxic impact on humans and the environment. Dianna, what is the relationship between the use of plastic pollution, and climate change?
I'm glad you asked me, Michelle. You know, It's such an honor to be sitting here with you guys talking about these things that are all, I'm so moved by everything everyone said already, but I have to say everything is really interconnected. And I'm hoping that we'll look at this year, 2020, as a year that we really were able to open our eyes and see the intersectionality between all of these different issues, and no longer just say, oh, this person's an environmentalist, to silo things so that people only care about one thing or another. It's all interconnected. We're part of nature. We can't exist without nature. And when we look at the issue of plastic, and plastic pollution, it's been a really sharp learning curve for me, coming as an artist who was working with plastic bags and these materials to make my artwork, and then slowly learning about the material and the impact of the material, and then realizing how ubiquitous it is and how it's in every facet of our lives somehow in beautiful colors. And it actually has certain funny aesthetic values to it as well. In seeing that, and then coming to be a part of a group of people who created Plastic Pollution Coalition, who created the Break Free from Plastic movement, having the honor to be involved with the film, The Story of Plastic, learning more and more and seeing this connection between the fact that plastic is primarily made from petroleum and byproducts of processing petroleum and fossil fuels. So as we look at that whole desire to move away from and divest from fossil fuels and focus our energy into clean energy, solar, wind, water, geothermal, in that same moment, we now see that plastic and our use of plastic and our dependence on it for packaging for all of our food and beverages and beauty products, or not all of them, but many of them, and our health products, that this is poisoning us, that this is making us sick. And it goes across the entire chain, from extraction through manufacturing, production, our use of it, if it's single use for a very short amount of time, and then it's instantly a waste management issue. And a lot of the way that's handled is open burn in the United States, in different parts of the United States, or incineration, incinerators, it's burnt, and it creates particulate pollution and releases dioxins. We're basically polluting ourselves on that entire chain. And the production of plastic creates greenhouse gases. So on all these different source points, it's not only creating toxics for us, toxins, but it's also, poisoning our water, poisoning our air. We're now finding microplastics in all these different, in salt, in honey, in beer, in the air, in our water, in bottled water. And so when you look at all of that and then you really dial down, for this year has really opened my eyes, and all of us in the movement, to the fact that the whole issue also disproportionately impacts lower income communities, communities of color, indigenous communities, and weakens us, and has been associated with different health issues. And these, when they compromise us in some way, also make us more susceptible to a pandemic. So it's just been an incredible year, again, in terms of coming to realizations and how all of this is so interconnected, and the great work that everybody here is doing and people around the world are doing to address it, and to look for positive solutions, alternative materials, help scale things up, help support them, and policy and legislation. So there's all kinds of great stuff happening. I don't mean to sound like a total downer on the subject, but this is really a year to, I think, if you're able to, if you're in a position where you can slow down for a moment and think about it and see these connections, it's going to be a very, very important year. It is already, but I think in retrospect, it will be one of the most important years of our lives.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dianna.
Sure.
You're amazing, and you never, ever sound like a downer. Only an upper.
Dianna, thank you so much. Thank you.
Something.
So the song says, not just churches, not just steeples, give me peoples helping peoples. Seth Fleisher and Dr. Emily Baldwin are the co-founders of Walk the Walk 2020 and the parents of two budding activists. They had an epiphany back in 2016 when they couldn't explain to their boys how an openly racist, misogynistic bully had won the highest office. In that moment, Walk the Walk 2020 was born. And we'll look at a video for a moment.
Walk the Walk 2020 was born when we woke up on November 9th, 2016 and asked, how could we not have done more? This all-volunteer initiative is our answer.
The Democratic Party has long neglected our base, especially African American and Latinx voters. And these are the communities that are disproportionately affected by Republican voter suppression. There are reasons lots of people don't vote.
If we support communities, we expand the electorate and the conversation, and we will win. There are far more eligible voters of color in swing states than Trump's margin of victory.
So Walk the Walk partnered with 12 amazing grassroots groups, like New Georgia Project and Voces de la Frontera. In just 4 months, we raised $2.5 million and fully funded those groups.
And now we've identified a dozen Democrats running in flippable state legislative districts. Competitive, underfunded candidates of color who are reaching out to voters that traditional campaigns have ignored.
So much attention goes to overfunded, high-profile races.
But small investments in these campaigns will turn out Democrats to vote all the way up the ballot and help finally realize the democracy that we aspire to.
Come walk the walk with us.
Bravo.
Emily and Seth, please tell us a little more about your work with Walk the Walk 2020 and what you may have learned that can give us some hope right now.
Thanks so much, Doniece. Great to be with you and with all of you today. This is a story of what I'd call accidental activism. We didn't set out to create a new initiative, but the more we researched, the clearer it became just how much money is in this system going to a small number of top-of-the-ticket candidates. And they're often candidates who can't lose or can't win. And it's much more money than can be used impactfully, and so a lot of it goes to, for example, expensive TV ads that are, they're not even shown to be terribly effective. So we wanted to really base this strategy on data. Research shows that what is most effective is what's called relational organizing. So people engaging others who know and trust them. And it's especially true among groups that historically have been left out of the political conversation, specifically Black and Latinx communities that really are the base of the Democratic Party. So it turns out that the best way to win was to support and engage politically neglected communities. And the best way to do that, it turns out, is to invest in grassroots groups that are already deeply embedded in those communities and have a strong track record of success. So on the geographic side, we identified particular regions of key swing states that have really important nested races, so that if we turn out a single Democratic voter, they can vote in competitive races all the way up and down the ballot, not just for president, so they can vote for really important state legislature seats and U.S. House seats that are competitive, and of course Senate and Senate seats in the presidency. So then on the efficacy side, we wanted to look at groups with expertise in relational organizing that were reaching out to voters remotely in light of the pandemic. And so based on this, we identified 12 just really incredible grassroots groups that met all of these criteria and had an urgent need for funding. In October, just a few weeks ago, at the beginning of October, when we closed our partners' funding gaps, we decided to put together a slate of 12 equally amazing candidates, all people of color in these same key districts who met the same criteria and were significantly underfunded. And then the other thing we've done, which is we're so excited about just over the last few weeks, is we built a volunteer platform that matches these candidates, many of whom are, they're just scraping by with literally no staff, matching these candidates with graphic designers and strategists and artists. We have a huge artist community that's involved in this. And they're donating their expertise to things like website development and leaflet design and even campaign strategy in a number of cases.
Oh, whoa.
So
So what's been amazing, so much has been amazing about this, and Seth and I could go on and on, but we won't. But, you know, as Seth said, we didn't really set out to do any of this. We set out to try to understand for ourselves what would be the most effective thing to do. And then what we learned as we kind of got more into it, as Seth explained, was that the most effective thing, the single best way to beat Trump, also turned out to be the most ethical thing. And when you stop and think about that, it actually is so obvious that what works is to make sure in these very specific ways that everybody has a voice, and that those of us who have the resources to do so can donate resources to support those communities that have been systematically left out of the conversation. And because initially we had thought maybe we would fly somewhere and go canvassing ourselves in Arizona or something. And what we realized was that people in those communities all over this country, they don't need me to fly in there. They know what they need. And people of color in our country, they're well aware of the ways that they've been left out of the conversation. And so how we could make a difference, we discovered, was instead to support groups in those communities that could bring people into these conversations and bring people into the voting booth. And also, beyond that, and people were alluding to this, it doesn't end in November, also help those same communities learn how to hold these elected officials accountable to actually build long-term democracy. This is not just about one candidate or one campaign. And so what we've heard from our partners every day is that the funding that we've brought in is helping them to reach more voters than they've ever been able to reach before. And they are combating voter suppression in real time. And it's day-to-day work. It's far removed from any presidential debate or any fancy ad from the Lincoln Project, but it really is the embodiment of democracy. It's just been so inspiring to see.
And I would say one of the most inspiring things is that our they are reaching people who have never been asked to participate before. So we can see this. Bob talked about it, the impact in the lines for early voting, and in the fact that more people of color and youth will have voted early this year than voted in the entire 2016 election. We just heard about an hour or two ago from our partner Texas Organizing Project that more African Americans have already voted in Texas than in the 2016 election. And in Harris County, the seat of Houston, they've already surpassed their 2008 and 2012 total turnout numbers. Yeah, just incredible.
So this is our word of our voice of hope. We're all, I know, flip-flopping between hope and incredible anxiety, but at this moment, I think what we know just from the work that we've been doing is that whether we win or lose, and God knows we must win, but whether we win or lose, something amazing is happening this year. And as much as we hear on the news about division and we see division in our country, there's also an incredible movement towards collaboration. And we, in Walk the Walk 2020, we've been so humbled to support these groups that have been on the ground in underrepresented communities for years, and to support them in ways that have really allowed them to reach their potential with voters of color. And so our connections with those communities that are, demographically, geographically very different from our own has been incredibly inspiring, awe-inspiring. And then as well, the other piece that we didn't really mention was that we've also built our own community through bringing people onto these calls that we've been doing and bringing people into our Walk the Walk network. We've recognized these connections with people all over the country. We have a donor base of over 4,000 people now. And as Seth mentioned, we've raised, $2.5 million, upwards of that at this point, all calling in from around the country, determined that we're not going to give up on the promise of this country and realizing that we have to do something. And that's why we named our initiative Walk the Walk. So we have just a few more days left. We post, if people are interested to learn more about what we're doing, we have at our website, walkthewalk2020.org, we've got a daily calendar of opportunities to volunteer for our incredible candidates and our organizations. And we invite you all, and everybody's doing so much, but we invite people to join us, and just to make sure that everybody, as everybody here is talking about, that everybody's finding their own peace in this crazy, complicated American democracy that we're all in.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Emily and Seth. It's a joy to be part of Walk the Walk 2020. Before we go to our final guests, Trudy and Jack, Jackson, you made it. That's so awesome. I just, if you want to unmute yourself and just comment on anything, we're so glad to have you here. You know, you didn't think you could do it, but do you want to say something?
Yeah, okay. I don't have to speak. I'm really happy to hear what you all have to say, and I really didn't want to miss it for that, and I'm sorry I couldn't plan to be here. You can consider me an emissary or an ambassador from that part of the population that is swirling and encountering all these problems in multiple fronts and is overwhelmed by all of them. So I came for the inspiration of hearing what you have to say, and I'm grateful, to get to hear all of what you just said. And I'm just so moved by all of it, and especially Walk the Walk, because I think that really is. That's sort of like a new veil being lifted from me, that as important as these high-profile, pivotal races are, we really have to build that kind of movement that our opponents began in that same way. School boards and state representatives and water boards and all these aspects of our democracy that are being eroded by the Alex Fund and the being supplanted by that kind of activism on the right. So anyway, I salute you all. I'm trying to face these fronts on a very personal level in my life right now. Especially, I've got homeless members in my family. It's so much. It doesn't have that much to do with money, and more to do with mental health and the idea that so much of our system doesn't serve everybody. And the idea that, and if we can, the degree to which we can turn from our own ambition and acquisition and the good life that we all embrace for ourselves and our family, we really have to serve everybody, all of humanity, and all of the children are our children, and everybody's children are ours. And so, the more I interact and try to serve and help my family member who has these problems, the more I see how deep homelessness has affected our entire culture, and how everywhere you look. I live in Los Angeles, so everywhere I look, there are these encampments and people under bridges and just on the sidewalk, and they all deserve the kind of dignity that that was mentioned earlier. Those people that you see in your. Of course, now you're supposed to say 6 feet from everybody, but so maybe 6 feet instead of 5 feet. But just the way in which you look into each other's faces and say, "I see you. I recognize that we're both here," and so happy that I could make this and this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackson.
I wanted to just add a little footnote when we're looking at our Mother Earth, that there's a film called Public Trust that was made by Patagonia Films. It's free on YouTube. You can just go there and watch it. And it's about the eroding or the conscious taking of our public federal lands. And it's really amazing, worth seeing. Public Trust on YouTube. Thank you. Okay, so our final guests today are Trudy Goodman and Jack Kornfield. They are Dharma teachers, activists, and beloved friends of the Ace of Cups. And Mary Gannon, I know you have a question for Trudy and Jack. Let's hear that.
Yeah. Well, I woke up the other day with this line, deep down in the garden. That line on the song, deep down in the garden, where no one is apart. Deep down in the garden of your heart. And when I look at recent events happening like Amy Barrett's Supreme Court confirmation, or acceptance of white supremacist militias, gerrymandering, cutting short the census, voter suppression, pandering to dictators, and abandoning our allies, decimation of environmental protections, and encouragement of cruelty, violence and racism, not to mention the 500 children in Mexico whose parents can't be found from Mexico. I feel, when looking at all these things, confusion, anger, and deep grief. Trudy Goodman and Jack Kornfield, I'm hoping you will share some wisdom about holding all of this and still being down in the garden of our hearts.
Thank you, Mary. So good to hear your words. And some of them I actually wrote in an email to Doniece, who was kindly not going to ascribe them to me as the leader of a nonprofit who's supposed to, we're supposed to be, anyway, not engaged in political work, but as a person, I can. Anyway, thank you. And Jack's going to speak first, and then I'll chime in.
I'm just so pleased and touched. The garden of my heart is like budding and growing and blooming with Larry and Wavy and Johanna and Doniece and Michelle and everybody who's spoken. So already there's something nourishing. And Trudy and I were out in an RV in the desert last week and the week before at, the Grand Canyon and out in Escalante. And at night, when it's clear and you can look at the canopy of stars, and you look into that canopy, and there's somewhere between 200 billion and a trillion galaxies. Wavy probably counted them. I don't know. He has a number. Each one of which has 100 or 200 billion stars. And it just stops my mind, and I go, okay, there's a vastness here. The turning of the seasons, the turning of life that we're a part of that's so much bigger. And it turns out the heart is as big as that. It can hold all of that. And we've been through this before as humanity. We've been through pandemics and earthquakes and typhoons and floods and injustice and dictators. And Mahatma Gandhi puts it this way for those who are discouraged. He says, when I despair, so here's Gandhi despairing, like many who have in these last years, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love has always won. Yes, there have been murderers and tyrants, and for a time they can seem invincible, but in the end, they always fall. Think of it, always. And we're part of some great turning, like the Ojibwa say, sometimes I go about pitying myself when I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. We know how to do this. We know how, even in my childhood, there weren't very many homeless people, not until Ronald Reagan, shut down public housing and things like. We know how to do this, and the suffering is not the end of the story. Just as Larry and others found out in ending smallpox. So they say in Zen, there are only two things. You sit and you tend the garden, and it doesn't matter how big the garden is. And that is, you take your time, you walk out and look at the stars, you have a communion with the, maple tree in your yard, and with where we live with the coyotes that run around, or the wildlife around you, whatever it is, the birds, and you listen to something much bigger than politics. And then you open the door, the sweet oil that eases the hinge into the garden of your heart by meditation and quieting your mind and listening inside to what you really care about, with our friend Ram Dass's quality of loving awareness. Not only do you bring in loving awareness, I see Wavy nodding, but as Ram Dass would say, you are loving awareness. That's actually loving awareness beaming at you from this screen, from all these eyes and all these hearts together. And so you tend your heart, and then once you've sat, you tend the garden, you get up with that heart that's in touch with the beauty of life, the unbearable beauty of life. Along with the ocean of tears, there's this unbearable beauty, and you begin to plant seeds and you nourish them. And here's Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, The heart is like a land planted with many different kinds of seeds, seeds of joy and peace and mindfulness, understanding and love, and seeds of craving and anger, of fear and hate and forgetfulness. These unhealthy and healthy seeds are always there, sleeping in the soil of the heart. The quality of your life depends on the seeds you water. If you water a seed of peace in your heart, peace will grow. The seeds of happiness in you are watered, and when they are, you become happy. When the seed of anger in you is watered, you become angry. The seeds that are watered frequently are those that grow strong. Teach one another to tend the garden of the heart and to water the beautiful seeds that you were born with. Now, one more thing to say. Our inspired and, for me, great heroine activist Molly Ivins says, keep fighting for freedom and love and justice, beloveds, but don't forget to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Wavy. Seconding Molly Ivins, Wavy and Molly. And so, secret. You paid your money, you waited till the end, you heard everybody speak. Now you want the secret, right? The secret is to act beautifully without attachment to the fruits of your actions. To plant beautiful seeds, to water them, and to begin to trust. This is from Thomas Merton, the mystic, who said to discouraged activists, do not depend on the hope of results. You may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless at times, and sometimes even bring about its opposite. And as you get used to this, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the truth, the rightness, the value of the work itself. And so you begin to plant seeds after you quiet the mind and feel the vastness that you are a part of, and realize that when you plant those seeds, they will eventually bear fruit. Every voter that is registered, every beautiful song that is sung, everything that touches the heart is your heart connected with all the others. And so Henry David Thoreau ends reminding us, though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders. And you are the one who makes wonders out of your heart. Quiet it, tend it, and get up to this garden, plant and water. Miss Trudy, dear.
Thank you,
my
Jack.
beloved.
Thank you. That
What
was
do you
so
have to-
beautiful. So beautiful. Yeah, that was really beautiful. One of the things, you know, Jack mentioned that we were out in, we were actually in the canyons of southwestern Utah. And yes, to see those layers, those rock formations of geologic time, and realize you can see the layer that was the bottom of the ocean millions of years ago. It does help put things in perspective. But at the same time, I couldn't help but notice, you know, we rented an RV, we stayed in some RV parks before we got the hang of, we don't have to do that. But in all the RV parks, all the national parks, I saw almost no Black or brown people. The only Black person I ran into was a lady in the shower when we were in the shower together in one of the RV parks in Las Vegas. And it just made me realize and appreciate the importance of, the work that Walk the Walk is doing, and that for all of us to remember that just how deeply rooted in our culture, and it did not start with this administration, as we know, these forces of white privilege, of white supremacy, the collective just privilege and impact of whiteness that we sometimes forget about. It's just so important to remember. And when we talk about, I loved that you talked about collaboration, Seth and Emily, because when we talk about unity, sometimes there's this feeling of that which unites us is so much more consequential than that which separates us, but it's really important not to annihilate the differences between us as well. And that it's really about collaboration across differences and not trying to say we're all the same, because that sameness is usually colored by our whiteness and assumption that everybody wants the same thing and everybody doesn't necessarily. And one of the things that we've been working on a lot in the meditation center that I founded inside LA is attention to diversity and inclusion. In the garden of my heart, yes, there's room for everybody. There's diversity of every kind, political, sexual, gender identification, race, all the identities and isms. There's room for everybody. And at the same time, is there inclusion in my life, in my embodied existence? Inclusion means that everybody might feel that they belong together, that they belong in a space together, and that they're safe there, and they can be at ease there, and they can express themselves freely there. So these are things that, for the garden of the heart to be manifest in our society, this is what we're all working toward. And this is what I'm so inspired by listening to all of you and working in your own way, in your own spheres. And yes, connected, all of it intersecting, like Dianna said. And I do want to give another shout out for The Social Dilemma. Our friend Tristan Harris, who is the star of that movie, has been like a lone voice crying in the wilderness for years, and now finally people are listening, and it's a really important film. So yeah, building community together through doing whatever the practices that we do, of course, are practices of meditation and mindfulness and self-compassion and loving kindness. And these are the ways that we can tend the garden of our heart, restore our sanity amidst the swirl of everything that Jackson was naming and feeling. And I think another piece that's important for me is the inspiring stories of people who really do change, like the story of C.P. Ellis, who was a Ku Klux Klan member and who had to work together because of a federal grant requirement with a leader of the Black community on issues having to do with their schools. And over time, these two who hated each other came to discover that poor Black people and poor white people have way more in common, and nobody really wants them to get together and realize that and work for social change. So those stories inspire me. And I think what also inspires me are the practices that we teach, because we also do them. And for me to be able to take a moment to step back and to take a deep breath and actually tune into my heart helps me know what's there, find my voice, and also find the courage to speak the truth. And that's one of the tensions that I'm holding right now. As I mentioned, being the representative in a leadership role in a nonprofit, how much can I really say of what I feel? And yet there's something so liberating and so freeing about not denying, about actually speaking with all the passion and intensity that we feel about the issues that we care about. So I just am really grateful to listen to everybody, to feel inspired by your work and your stories, and to be in the company. I just want to give also a shout out to Doniece, because as I look through the Zoom tiles at all of you, my connection to almost everybody is through you, Dee. And I'm so grateful to you. It's either you or Ram Dass. So I'm really grateful to you and for inviting us. And I'll let Jack end with some of Jack's beautiful words.
Well, I'm remembering one of those great moments that happened something like 50 years ago at Woodstock, when Wavy was there in his memorable statement about breakfast in bed for 450,000 people. And now what I see on the screen and what I feel in the big hearts that have come together is this is breakfast in the heart, a new beginning in the heart, you know, for 7.5 billion people served by Wavy Gravy and all of the rest of you in the form of music and art and love and politics and the tending of the great garden that we share of this shared heart.
Thank you.
Kelly's hump is full of seeds.
Wavy, what do you say about a sense of humor?
If you don't have a sense of humor, it just isn't funny anymore.
Or if you don't laugh, you'll end up with
what?
Your brains and beans in
Oh,
the
your
brain.
beans and your brains on the ceiling. There you go.
just a few. My favorite Wavy quote is, "We're all the same person, just trying to shake hands with ourselves." Thank you so much, Trudy and Jack. That was so nourishing. So nourishing. I needed that, and I know we all did. We need to remember that it's going to be okay, and this too shall pass. And thank you. So I want to thank everybody: Dallas, Doniece Kaufman, Diane Vidalich, Mary Gannon Alfier, Doniece Sandoval, Natascha and Bob, Seth Fleisher and Emily Baldwin, Wavy Gravy and Jahanara Romney, Trudy Goodman and Jack Kornfield, Mary Ellen Simpson Mercy, Dr. Larry Brilliant, Jackson Browne, Dianna Cohen, and Rachel Ann. And please stick around as we have some closing words to share in the premiere of the ACE's next video, Sister Ruth.
Ooh.
Rachel Ann, take it away.
Okay, we have a few minutes.
Wow, I haven't been inspired in a long time because there's so much going on that you're bombarded with that it's hard to find a place for it. And listening to all of you and the work you're doing in the world, that was really amazing. I hope all of you watching at home are inspired to learn more and do more and activate the garden of your heart. Michelle, thank you so much. For those of you that don't know, right before this, Michelle had her own event. She's hosting these incredible conversations about healing and trauma, and just she's doing some amazing work in the world. So you can find out more and keep up with what she's doing at crackedupmovie.com. Highly recommend. Michelle, you're changing lives and saving lives. And she literally popped in from one Zoom to our Zoom. So I thank you. Thank you for taking this on and joining us. You are super special. We'd also like to thank George Wallace and our label at High Moon Records, who really are just an incredible team of people to work with. They've put out 2 incredible albums with the Ace of Cups. We couldn't be luckier as artists and musicians, and as their unmanager, as the Ace like to call me, because these women are super independent. So we call me their unmanager because they are not manageable. But we are so lucky to be on this label. So George and Lucas and Pat and Alan and Jay, thank you so much. The new album, actually, Sing Your Dreams, that just came out, is where you can find the track, Basic Human Needs. So we hope you will enjoy checking that out. You can find it on our website. And thank you again to all of our guests. You're truly inspiring. And if you want to find out more about each of the organizations, we'll put something up on our Facebook. And then here is actually a really cool slide about organizations you can help in the next few days. So it's not too late to make a difference. So Walk the Walk 2020, headcount.org, swingleft.org, and movement.vote. If you visit some of their websites, they've got all sorts of things you can do from home: phone banking, door knocking, calling, texting. So if you have some time, please do check out what they're working on. It is not too late to make a difference. And then last and not least, we're just, again, so grateful. And we had this song that Doniece wrote. I can let her speak to it a lot, about Sister Ruth. And we put it on the album. And then as we were listening to it, when Ruth Ginsburg died, Doniece and I were like, you know what, we should do something really beautiful in her honor. So we're so excited to world premiere our video of Sister Ruth, RBG. We are on it. And I promise you, we will make you proud. We will finish your work. We've got this. And together we will make this world that we all want to live in. And thank you guys, everyone, for coming. Don't forget to go to our website. You can go to Facebook, learn more about the great people that are here. And Doniece, if you want to tee up Sister Ruth, Pamela will play it when you're done. And thank you so much again, everyone, for joining us for this very, very special evening.
Thank you. I just want to say Sister Ruth is a song that was written a long time ago, but I think any woman named Ruth harkens back to the Ruth in the Bible. And this was inspired by the story of Ruth in the Bible. And it's a story of, her story is a story of loyalty and sticking with someone. So that's the inspiration for the song. Ruth didn't abandon her mother-in-law when her husband died and when all the men in the family died. And Ruth went with her and said, I'm not going to let you go. I'm not going to let you wander off alone. Your people are my people, and I will stay with you forever. So that was the beginning seed inspiration of the song. I hope you enjoy it. It's really also a lot about what's going on in our world with children all over the world and families. So enjoy.
And one quick shout out to Pam for running the back end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know this never works as easy as we'd like it to. And also a shout out really quick, I forgot, to Save Your Stages. Really important. There's a lot of people who work on the back end of all the concerts and entertainment that have not been working for months. So if you can support the organizations that are helping the people that make entertainment possible, the roadies, the managers, the staff, the bartenders, try to see if there's room to help support some of those organizations that are really focused on helping the entertainment world and the people who make things like this happen. So thank you, Pam. Thank you, everyone. And Sister Ruth, this is for you.
Sister Ruth, so many years ago, she said, where you may be going, I will go. Whoa, my sisters, can we do less today? When the balance hangs, it could go either way. America's still waters have been stirred. Can the songs of love and freedom still be heard? Whoa, my brothers, have we gone far astray? When the balance hangs, it could go either way. Rock-a-bye that little child sleeping in his mama's arms. Tokyo to Mexico, from here to Lebanon. Will he have shelter in a storm, a place to play and grow? One human family, you know. We all know. This life may be a moment long. Turn around, find that moment gone. Whoa, give yourself to the ones you love before they slip away. When the balance hangs, it could go either way. Rock-a-bye that little child sleeping in his mama's arms. Tokyo to Mexico, from here to Lebanon. Will he have shelter in a storm, a place to play and grow? One human family, you know. We all know. Sister Ruth so many years ago. She said, where you may be going, I will go. Whoa, my sisters, can we do less today? When the balance hangs, it could go either way. Rockabye that little child, sleeping in his mama's arms. Tokyo to Mexico, from here to Lebanon. Every daddy's little girl and every mother's son, born into this crazy world, someone's precious one. Will they have shelter in a storm, a place to grow and play? When the balance hangs, it could go